Welcome to the Pistons Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe if you haven't done it already and click on that like button. Our Pistons, 5 in a row, baby. We beat the Nets 113-98. It makes 8 out of the last 9 we've won, and our record is 19-18. So we're undefeated in the new year. So that's pretty cool. We got to take on the Golden State Warriors at Little Caesars tomorrow night, and so that's going to be a big, exciting game. You know, they're struggling. Their records, I'm sure, probably not as good as ours or about the same as ours. So you know, there's so much parity in the NBA. There's so many teams that have won like 18, 19, or 20 games. There's just half the league is right around 500. So we're right in there with them, though, instead of being at the bottom all the time. So we're tied for 7th in the East, and so it's, you know, anything can happen. So here, you know, before the year started, I was hoping that we would improve greatly. I was very confident we were going to be way more fun to watch. I was confident JB would do a good job, and I thought that, you know, we would, but I didn't think we were going to be this successful. I'll admit that, and I was hoping that a bunch of teams would be bunched up together down at the bottom, and we would squeeze in at the end, and we would maybe have the 5th or 6th worst record in the league, and that we would, you know, so we would have good lottery odds still, and we would maybe still get a high pick. Well, that ain't happening now. There's so many teams below us and that are trying to tank, and so that we'll never slide down that low. One interesting thing, though, is, you know, when you make the play-in tournament, the top 10 teams make it. So, but 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th teams play in the play-in tournament. And so you could finish with the 7th, and the 7th seed, and then if you can get knocked out, if you were to get knocked out in the play-in tournament, you would fall into the lottery, even though your record was much better than like the 8th, 9th, or 10th place teams, seeded teams. So we still could get that happen, and our pick is projected 1 through 13. So if we don't finish in the bottom 13, then our pick will go to the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just got the trade in the Karl Anthony Towns trade. So they got that pick from the Knicks that was our pick when we got traded for Isaiah Stewart back in that draft. So anyway, watch Cooper Flagg play last night. Man, he's exactly what we need. You put him on the team with all the pieces we have right now, and it's lights out, because he's like 6'10". He is a phenomenal shot blocker. He's so energized, and he anticipates really well. He gets up really high. He makes steals. He's a great passer, very unselfish. But he made a steal and a dunk, and he dunked on a 7-footer. It was sensational. I'm sure you probably saw it. Then he had another dunk where he drove it down through the middle of the lane and did a 2-hand dunk. But he can shoot outside. He can go left. He can go right. Like I said, he shares the ball. He kicks it out. He gets lots of assists. He gets lots of steals. He gets blocks. He does everything, and he's just turned 18. You know, he started a year early. He skipped a year of high school, and so he's really young. So we're not going to get him, but that's okay. We have a really nice team going, and we'll see what happens in the draft. But we got to see Bobi Klintman tonight, and so he could be as good as a first-round draft pick. It remains to be seen. But it's really tough. You know, we got so many kids, so many guys playing well that it's hard for JB, and he likes to play 9-man rotation, but he's been playing 10 guys a lot of the time, even though he says he only wanted to play 9. And every player that you add to the rotation, that makes less minutes for somebody. You know, it just dwindles the minutes. I know from coaching, it was always hard for me when I had a lot of players on my team. Even when there's garbage time, then you just don't have as many minutes. The more players you have, the harder it is to dole out those minutes. But another thing I want to say about JB, you know, he's done such a great job, and so he certainly should be considered. I'm certainly sure he'll get some votes for Coach of the Year, and you know, he's turned this team already he won 14 games last year, and he's done a great job. So, he got fired from Cleveland, and Kenny Atkinson is at Cleveland, and he could easily get the coach of the year. And a lot of times I've seen it all my life where a coach gets fired and he's done a good job. The team's won a bunch of games like Cleveland did with JB, but they switch coaches, and then it's just after they've had a coach for 3 or 4 years, and they get a new voice, and sometimes something sparks. We've seen it with Mark Jackson was the coach for the Warriors, and then they fired him, hired Steve Kerr, then he started winning championships. Doug Collins was the coach at Chicago Bulls, and they fired him and hired Phil Jackson, and then they won championship like the first year they hired him. And I've seen it with just lots of different coaches. Rick Carlisle coached really well, got coach of the year for the Pistons, and then they hired Larry Brown and won the championship the next year. Even though Carlisle did a great job, it just sometimes that changed in the voice. But one thing that did happen that's people need to realize is last year, Cleveland. I said that as soon as Cleveland got Mitchell, I said, man, they're going to be so loaded. And I thought for a while there, I wasn't right. I thought that team is going to be just so good for a bunch of years because they got all these young guys. They got Garland and Mitchell and Allen and Mobley, and those guys are all young and they're all all-star potential, and they're going to be all in their prime for a long time. And they didn't do always necessarily so great. But last year, when they fired JB, those four guys, those four best players, only played in 28 games all out of 82. And this year already, they've played in 32 games, the top four guys, and we're still just so early in the season. So anyway, that's, just the way the luck goes. But another thing I was going to talk about this before is interesting. There's always quite a bit of debate in Piston Nation about the center rotation, and is Duren bad? Should we be starting Stu ahead of him? And what about Paul Reed? And and so I did finally write down what they do per 36 minutes. So like Cade, most star players play about 36 minutes. So that's why they decided to do this, to try to make a fair comparison of, if somebody plays 36 minutes and scores 28 points and somebody plays 14 minutes and scores 15 points, you really can't compare those players based on the minutes. So anyway, Duren, these are all 36 per 36 minutes. Duren averages 14. Stu would average 10, prorated his scoring average through 36 minutes, and B-Ball Paul would average 16 points. So rebounding, Duren would average 13.6 rebounds, Stu 10 rebounds, and Paul Reed would average 7.2 rebounds. So this is a big one. So our center position has got to be right up there high in block shots, because Duren over 36 minutes would average 1.6 blocks a game, and Stu has been fabulous. He had some great blocks again tonight. He is averaging 2.1 blocks per 36 minutes, and he is, of all the bench players in the league, he is second in the NBA with the most blocks. He has 37 blocks off the bench, and Jonathan Isaac from Orlando has 40. So he's right up there among the best shot blockers that comes off the bench. So Paul Reed averages 2.1 blocks a game, just like the same exact number of Stu per 36 minutes. So he makes things happen. So steals, Duren, 0.8 steals per game. Stu, 0.7 steals per game. B-Ball Paul, 4 steals a game per 36 minutes he would average. And so, he really makes things happen. He really gets out there when there's high pick and rolls. He just jumps them and he gets his hands out there and gets balls, steals them or deflects them. Assists, Duren averages 3.3, but he turns it over way too much. 2.8 turnovers per 36 minutes. Stu averages 3 assists, and he turns it over 1.5 times. And Paul Reed averages 3.4 assists, so he's got the highest. Shooting wise, Duran shoots 69%, Stu shoots 52%, and Paul Reed shoots 56%. And free throws, Duran really slumped. He shot 79% last year. He's only shooting 60% this year. Stu's shooting 89%, but Stu never gets to the line. He very, very rarely shoots free throws. And Paul Reed is shooting 83%. He doesn't shoot a lot of free throws either. And Stu is shooting, the only one of them that's really shot many threes, he's shooting 26% on threes. So that's just to look at the comparisons, take what you want from that. But, and I know there's things that you can't factor in there. There is certainly, I know some of you are yelling, yeah, but Duran doesn't play good defense, but his blocks and steals are not that low. They're better than they were last year. And he doesn't rotate fast enough sometimes, that's for sure, but he had some really good blocks tonight. So anyway, interesting game. Cade played the first 9 minutes, and he got one shot in the first 9 minutes. So teams are, other teams have tried doing it, but they really work hard to deny him the ball and not let him get the ball. A lot of teams have been trapping Cade in the fourth quarter, and tonight they were trapping him in the first quarter, and so he gets rid of the ball out of his hands, and then we got a lot of guys that like to shoot, so they're not passing it back. Like I said before, Beasley doesn't get any assists, and Hardaway doesn't ever get any assists, and so neither does Tobias. He gets I think a few more assists than those other guys, but those guys are looking to score once they get it. So if Cade gets the ball out of his hands, he's not going to probably get it back. But anyway, one interesting thing I've never talked about on the podcast is Cade's, and it's a bad game to talk about because he scored only 13 points tonight. So he had a streak, and I don't remember what the streak is now, but it was 15 points and 5 assists. He had this long streak for like maybe almost the whole season. And so that streak ended tonight because he only got 13 points. Of course, he only played 23 minutes. So that was partly why that happened. But one thing I just want to say about Cade, and how hard he is to stop from scoring, because a lot of guys have a lot of different variety of ways that they score, but Cade has everything. Cade takes it all the way to the basket. He's been dunking more this year. Will post up. He's got that jump hook, left or right-handed. He can do it. He's got these spin moves. He gets into the lane and he can spin. He's got that fall-away jumper. He gets that mid-range jumper where he drives in, makes some contact, then falls back and shoots it and can make it at a high clip. His variety on his threes. He's shooting step-back threes, but he's shooting a lot of threes off the dribble, and he's still shooting catch-and-shoot threes. So his floater game. He's shooting some floaters, and so he's got a huge variety of ways that he can score, and that's been really cool to see, and that's what makes him really hard to stop. But the best way to stop him is to trap him, because he's unselfish, and so he's going to unload it. So anyway, Hardaway tonight played 23 minutes and was 2 for 6, 2 for 4 on threes, and 4 for 4 on free throws. He had 10 points. Tobias played 26 minutes, 4 for 9, 1 for 3, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. So he was really good passing the ball tonight, 9 points. Duran, only 21 minutes, 3 for 5, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals, 2 blocks. Beasley, leading scorer, he had 23 points. He played by far the most minutes of anybody. He played 10 minutes more than I think about anybody. He had 33 minutes, 9 for 17, and he was 4 for 11 on threes, 1 for 1 on free throws, 2 rebounds. And he had 5 assists tonight. I always make fun of him because he will have a bunch of games, a game where he scores a lot of points and shoots a lot of shots, but he doesn't ever pass it. He had 5 assists tonight, so that was really good. So Cade played only 23 minutes. He was 6 for 10, very efficient, 0 for 3 on threes. And once again, he got stuck with the ball and got barely over half court. And the time was running out at the end of the first quarter. And so he hoisted up, and it counts against the shooting percentage. I know I've talked about that before. That I don't think it should. But he had 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 turnovers, too many. So 4 turnovers wasn't too many for his game that he had the other night when he played like over 36 minutes. But tonight he didn't play as many minutes. He didn't handle the ball as much. He didn't shoot as much or pass as much. So 4 turnovers was too many. And again, he had a couple of those careless ones that he does from time to time. But Ron Holland got to play more because he got to play all the garbage time. He got 28 minutes, 4 for 7, 0 for 2 on threes, 0 for 1 on free throws, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 8 points. But he made things happen again tonight. He was, he played really well, I thought. Tech, though, Tech was so big one. Simone Fontecchio, it was so awesome to see him. Even when the game was still close, he was making big shots. So his minutes weren't, and his points weren't just all garbage time. He played 24 minutes, 7 for 11, 3 for 5 on threes, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 17 points. So that is huge. And I have a lot of faith in him and that he can really contribute to this team still. Stu played 20 minutes. So that the hard thing is, I went over those numbers for our centers, but there's only 48 minutes to spread out for the 3 centers, and so we all want Paul Reed to play more, but if Paul Reed plays more, then Duran or Stu have to play less, unless because he doesn't play them together ever. So sometime he might. I wouldn't be surprised someday if there was a matchup where he might play them together. But it's great to see Sasser had a really good game, 22 minutes, but he was fine. He was on fire. 5 for 9, but 5 for 7 on threes. So he's been struggling a little bit since Ivy got out, and so that was really good to see. He scored 15 points, and Wendell Moore played a little bit, and Dennis Jenkins played a little bit, but that was not that much. But anyway, not a lot to talk about this game. Not a lot to talk about in the Piston world. We still got, like I said, a huge winning streak going. We're trending in the positive direction. It's going to be interesting to see how fired up they get tomorrow night to play against the Warriors. But I hope, big thing is, Asar, bummer, didn't play tonight. He's still ill, so there's a lot of stuff going around. I told you I had the influenza, and there's COVID going around, and so there's lots of illnesses. You see a lot of NBA players that are out for illness. And so I hope that whatever he has, that he recovers, and I hope he plays tomorrow night. So I love watching him play. But thank you for listening. Be the reason that someone feels cared for, and go Pistons.